This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dorrinal, Brian Niemeier, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. That's right, one more episode of the greatest Geek Gab podcast ever made in the history of Western civilization. Broadcasting to you live from undisclosed locations across the internet to keep our unusually intelligent and attractive hosts safe from the hordes of ninja assassins hunting them down. How's your week been, Dorrinal?
Still alive? No ninjas have got me yet.
Well, see, that's a good week. That's always a good week. Not even any close ninja encounters?
None at all.
You haven't had to have a neck-breaking chase through the streets of the town in which you live, dodging fruit cart vendors on the sidewalk as you desperately strive to escape the insane assassins close by? Not even once?
Oh yeah, that happened.
Oh, okay.
What's going on, Brian?
Hey, well, luckily where I live, we don't so much get snow in the winter as just freezing rain and ice, with sometimes some snow over or under it. So basically, my whole town turns into a skating rink, and the ninjas haven't quite adapted to that yet.
Honestly, I hear ninjas have trouble with snow. I hear that.
Yeah.
Pirates too. So if you get in the middle of a dispute between a ninja clan and a pirate crew, you'll want to head for icy and/or snowy terrain. It is the safest terrain you can be in a situation like that.
I haven't written a book dealing with pirates. I can vouch for that. My research backs that up. So you're right.
See, now that's interesting because ninjas should be able to adapt to the cold because, as we all know, ninjas are mammals.
Mammals are both warm-blooded and they have fur, typically speaking. I was going to say, unless you're Stephen Totillo, but, you know.
Oh snap. But yeah, it's not so much the cold as the ice. They have to wear those special shoes with, like, the hobnails on them, and those are illegal around here. You can't get those. They chew up the roads, so that the ninjas have had to devise a method of getting to me. But
they're hell on wooden floors too.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time, but I've made peace with that.
So speaking of something that has nothing to do with ninjas or pirates, Nazis! Because nothing perks up a light-hearted podcast about geek topics like Nazis!
You've done Godwind, the Geek Gab. What have you done?
We are, of course, talking about, and I say of course because I assume you know, because I assume you're the kind of people who would know if you're listening to this show. Honestly, if some small notion of what we're going to be talking about in about 30 seconds once I'm done, hasn't already entered into your head, if you're not nodding to yourself knowingly, something is probably wrong. You're probably in the wrong corner of the internet. Nazis, of course, referring to Amazon Video's recently released 10-episode dramatization of the classic Philip K. Dick novel, The Man in the High Castle. And warning, there may be spoilers for the show inadvertently come out during this podcast. It is also possible, though highly unlikely, there may be spoilers for the classic Philip K. Dick novel, which I myself have not read.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't read it.
I think we know the title of this episode, though. It's got to be, Geek Gab goes Godwin or some such alliteration.
So none of the three of us have read the novel, but two. Now, I'm assuming since you suggested this topic, Dorrinal, that you've at least seen the series.
Yeah. While my father was up for Thanksgiving break, we binge watched a lot of stuff. One of those things was The Man in the High Castle, which I figured you guys would have seen or would be interested in seeing. We enjoyed it, actually.
Okay. Well, let's start. Let's give a little bit of background about Man in the High Castle, just so if you haven't heard about it, you know where you stand. The Man in the High Castle is set in an alternate history of the 1960s, where Nazi Germany and Japan won World War II. Nazi Germany has occupied the eastern part of the country. Japan has occupied the Pacific coastal states, Washington, Oregon, California, and between them is the Rocky Mountains, which is kind of a neutral zone, kind of a free zone. And so the United States has apparently its own government, its own flag, but it is a vassal state to Nazi Germany. And it has the SS, the German SS has U.S. officers serving in it, and a lot of the things that you would expect from a Nazi-occupied United States of America are present. And honestly, I found that very, very chilling. I thought they did a great job with depicting the insanities of Nazi Germany brought to America.
Absolutely. I think one of the most chilling, the creepiest scene ever was a young man. One of the main characters is traveling west through the U.S. on the way to the neutral zone, and he's stopped by some police officer. Wearing, of course, he's got the Nazi armband and everything, in addition to his, Pennsylvania police outfit, right? And they have a quick chat, and there's this sort of it looks like snow falling around them, or ash, and the character's like, well, what's all this? He said, oh, that's the fallout from the crematorium down the road. It always does this. That's where we burn all the invalids and the mental patients because they're a drag on the state.
Yeah, I agree. That was just...
Yeah.
See, the thing is, it wasn't overplayed. It wasn't, they weren't taking you to the place where you can see trucks unloading bodies or anything. All you have is this stuff that looks like it might be snow and a couple of lines, and it was just chilling and brutally effective.
I think that's the best part of the show, actually. The best part of the show is the way you're looking at America through that twisted lens. Great stuff like a character who's a high-ranking member in the American Nazi Party is talking to his son about doing things like Hitler Youth and how he's doing at school and how to be a good member of a good citizen to the Reich. But also they're having dinner at home in sort of that 60s nuclear family sort of setting with turkey and apple pie and everything, and it's that brutal corruption of Americana with Nazi Germany. It's just, it hurts your brain, man.
Yeah. Okay, let's. I want to talk about the actors real quick. The main character, the female lead of the movie of the series, is Alexa Davalos. Absolutely gorgeous, and the only things that I have seen her in were way long time ago. She was in the Chronicles of Riddick, and she was an Angel. If you've watched Angel, you may remember a thief who wore big long leather gloves and a leather cat suit because she is electrical. She has electrical powers, like she was a mutant, and shocked Angel, and actually shocked his heart into beating for a little bit. If you remember her, that's the same actress. She's been in a bunch of other things. It's just I've never seen any of them. She was in Clash of the Titans. She played Andromeda, and and a TV show called Mob City, which I haven't seen. The other primary female lead, who is this young kid Dorrinal was just talking about, who was the one stopped by the policeman, the best thing I can remember him from is he was in Bones, the TV series. He played one of the squints, one of the lab technicians. He was, if I remember correctly, the super genius white trash dropout who has a southern accent. So if you remember that character, super genius dropout with a southern accent, that's who he played. And I'm trying not to give spoilers, so there's more I could tell you about his character in this. The other major character, at least as far as what I was watching the show, is a guy named Rufus Sewell, and he was the main character in Dark City.
Favorite movie of all time.
And he's been in a number of other things. Just Dark City is the one I can remember off the top of my head. He was an Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which I technically have seen, but I don't remember a lot of. And some other stuff that he was in The Illusionist. He was in John Adams, the HBO TV miniseries, which was excellent. He was in A Knight's Tale. Oh, if you've seen A Knight's Tale with the late actor who played the Joker.
Heath Ledger.
Say that again?
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger. He played the bad Count Adamar, the bad guy in A Knight's Tale. So if you remember either A Knight's Tale or Dark City, he was major characters in both of those. So, and he plays this SS officer who is American. His name's John Smith. He's an American SS officer, and he wears the American SS logo, which is a white Nazi logo with the wings on a field of red and blue. Which also, I thought that was subtle, but telling. I mean, they just did a whole lot of stuff in the show with, like the Statue of Liberty has been changed. She's no longer holding a torch. Instead, she's giving the Nazi salute. And there's a huge SS building, or maybe even just a Nazi state building that is, as far as I can tell, it's in the same place where the World Trade Center was. I don't know. I'm going to stop for a second and let Brian, who didn't see the show, if he has any questions.
Well, I may have some that develop here, but I have pulled up the trivia for A Man in the High Castle that I'd like to share, if you guys don't mind.
Okay.
A couple of these points are pretty interesting. So, Philip K. Dick not only featured the ancient Chinese oracle, the I Ching, in the book, he consulted it himself during the writing to determine plot direction. One of the characters, Mr. Baines, borrows his name from the translator of the I Ching version that Dick used, the Wilhelm Baines edition. So that's pretty classic Philip K. Dick.
Wow.
Yeah, he's in some pretty out there plot outlining methods.
So that brings up the other part of the show, because the other main character, the woman that Daddy Warpig mentioned, lives in San Francisco, part of the Pacific states that are under Japan's control.
Okay.
And so there's half the story happens there, under Japanese control, and there's a crazy or superstitious old bureaucrat who's always consulting the oracle there.
Yeah.
I think the reason why we're talking about the Nazis taking over America is because the imagery there is a lot stronger, and the acting in the story is a lot more interesting there. Though there's some weaknesses to the show. The weaknesses are those two young leads. Their characters, the writing, and the actors themselves are I want to say mediocre, right? Things get a lot more interesting every time they go back to New York City, and we get to see Rufus Sewell be the the bad loyal American Nazi, and all the there's lots of political intrigue there, of course, because it's 1960 something and Adolf Hitler is getting old, and so power struggles are emerging.
Old and probably really syphilitic.
Yeah.
It is, I think, a lot of things people don't realize about Nazi Germany is that there were a lot of power schisms. It was not a unified bloc. In fact, the earliest Nazi organization inside the party was the Sturmabteilung, which is the brown shirts. They were the party stalwarts. They were the guys who would go around at Nazi party rallies with clubs and would beat up people who weren't as enthusiastic as they would like, or who would go down the streets and beat up people. Long before the SS came into existence, the SA was the thugs of the Nazi party, but the SA themselves were wiped out entirely in one night of infighting. They fell out of favor with the Fuhrer, they sent in the SS, and they murdered all of them, just straight up shot them in the middle of the night. And so this kind of inter-party politics in the Nazi party was played for keeps, because you could find yourself and your entire faction on the outs with Hitler, and they'd just kill you.
Yeah, the Night of the Long Knives.
So when they're doing this in the show, when they're showing these inter-party politics of people trying to drag the party one way and trying to drag Nazi Germany another way, and there's discussions of what's going on between Germany and Japan, it's very that part of it, that factionalism, is very, very true to life.
So that's interesting. Here's something else interesting. Another item of trivia: Edelweiss, the opening theme song, which I didn't know, is commonly believed to be an Australian folk song that was actually written for the musical Sound of Music, a play that never would have been written if the Nazis had won the war.
Yeah.
So that's cute. The end credits have the standard line: the characters and incidents portrayed are entirely fictional, but apart from being in English, it's also repeated in German and Japanese.
Here's the interesting thing, and I realize it's something big we've overlooked up until this point, about Edelweiss being written in our world but would never have been written in the world of The Man in the High Castle. It isn't just a story about an America under Nazi rule. It's also a story about films, news films of the Nazis' loss of World War II from our world, apparently from our world, showing up in their world from a place they know not where or how, and being smuggled by the resistance to locations they don't know why. And the theory put forth at the beginning of the show is that this man called the Man in the High Castle produces these movies, and that somehow the existence of these movies would overturn the Nazi victory in World War II, and nobody really knows how or why. But that's kind of the MacGuffin of the series. That's the spine along which the series runs, is these films of a world in which Nazi Germany was defeated, showing American tanks and American soldiers going into Nazi Germany and digging Nazis out of their holes, showing up in a world where Nazis have ruled for 20 years, and people trying to protect them, people trying to smuggle them, people trying to gain them or lose them, the Kempei Tai, which is the Japanese secret police, searching for them, and so on and so forth. But that's the other oddity, is this background cross-world idea that runs through the whole show.
Yeah, there's a bit of trivia about that too, that in the original novel, the Grasshopper Lies Heavy is a banned novel within the novel by the Man in the High Castle, which tells of another alternate world in which the Allies won World War II, but not the same way as in our world. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think they show another film later in the series, trying not to spoil too much, but it's evident that we're not just talking about this world and our world. We're talking about these films are coming in from multiple different realities,
Multiple different timelines.
where events had played out differently, even from our world and this fictional Nazi America. So.
Okay.
Yeah, the other movie that shows up is a movie of where apparently the Nazis have still successfully invaded America, but have not pacified it as thoroughly as they have in the main timeline of Man in the High Castle, where it looks like there is still armed struggle against Nazi rule going on, where resistance fighters are still being militarily effective. What I'm telling you right now is not a spoiler for anything that shows up in the show. It is my analysis of the imputations behind what we see in the video. So I haven't told you anything about the movie. I haven't explained anything that will show up in the show. It's just my analysis of what we do see in that other movie implies. So there is at least 3 timelines that we know of, and maybe more, but at least 3 that we know of. One where the Nazis have completely occupied it, one where the Nazis have only are still struggling, and then the world where the Nazis lost, which may not even be our world.
So, not to derail things, but I did have one question, which was I'd seen on Twitter people saying that they were rooting for the Nazis. Can you guys get a reason for that? And I think it had something to do with the leads.
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that the best actor with the best character is Rufus Sewell playing the villain.
Okay.
John Smith, yeah.
They also do a lot of things late in the season to make him a sympathetic character. And I'm sitting on the couch and I turn to my father and I'm like, I can't believe they are getting me to root for the fucking Nazis. This is bullshit. Another thing is that one of the overarching plot, sort of a danger that hangs over everybody, is imminent war between Japan and Germany, because they've got that wide neutral zone separating them. But part of the setting of this world, the explanation is that Nazi Germany won because they developed the bomb before the U.S., and Japan never developed the bomb. So the Japanese are basically have accepted the fact that they control the West Coast because the Nazis basically let them have it, and there are a lot of the factions within Nazi America. Many of them want to start a new war so that they can take over the rest of the continent, and so that's sort of hanging over everybody, and so. Nazis who are against that war are naturally painted sympathetically, and this is the best part. Minor spoiler here. As far as I can tell, the Nazis who want to avoid the war and keep the peace, they're the ones loyal to Adolf Hitler.
Huh. Oh, that's nice.
In fact, to go back to what we were saying, they actually find one other movie that is from a world where this war between Japan and Nazi Germany happens, and it's a movie about San Francisco being destroyed by a Nazi atomic bomb in the attack on Imperial Japan. So. Yeah. There's a movie from yet another timeline, so that's at least 3 timelines that these movies have come from.
Well, actually, that brings up a good point. Is that a movie of an alternate timeline in which the Nazi Germany decided not to split the U.S. with Japan, or is that a movie from the near future showing this is what happens if you let war happen?
We haven't seen any evidence that the movies come from the future. All of the movies we saw were either happening at the same time or happened before in a different timeline. Now, there may be actual, coming back from the future, but we haven't seen any evidence of it yet. You could think that, though. You could assume that, though.
But there was another movie from a similar timeline where Germany and Japan are at war, which looks like it came from the near future, or at least the present. And I don't want to spoil it, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because it involves well, I can't say.
Well, with PKD, keep in mind, one question you have to ask yourself is, are these movies really depictions of something in an alternate reality? Or are the movies actually making things happen, or is it both? Because he's not above just creating, figure eight logic loop like that and just living with the tension.
Well, and Philip K. Dick also had a really relaxed attitude towards time. In his own personal life, he literally believed that he was living in the modern time and in AD 30 Jerusalem at the same time.
Yeah.
That he himself was. This is not a past memory or reincarnation, that he was existing in both these times at the same time.
Yeah, I think he believed that the modern world was like some sort of elaborate hologram. So you're totally right.
So yeah, it's certainly possible that what we've come to think of in general geek culture about timelines being separate and the future and the past being separate, they don't necessarily apply in the context of a Philip K. Dick story.
Yeah, if you guys ever read Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said by him?
I have not. I haven't read a lot of Philip K. Dick.
Oh man, I recommend it. It's it's quite a head trip, very literally. But yeah, in that book, let's see, to avoid spoilers, but there's a drug, right? Common theme. There's also in the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, but there's a drug that if you take it, it can not just affect you or make you higher, make you hallucinate. Like, it actually imposes your altered mind state on the world. So, like, if you take this drug, other people can forget who you are because you took this drug. I just find it fascinating.
So yeah, Philip K. Dick did a lot of things that were that don't fall, because his entire almost ethos is all about reality being highly fluid in ways that are pretty much alien to most people. So yeah, if you can imagine reality as a daydream, to where in a daydream you can think anything you want and it kind of happens. In Philip K. Dick's stories, very often reality is exactly like that.
So these movies could really go in a lot of different directions with these movies, and the showrunners have hinted that they're going to take advantage of that.
And oddly enough, I think Philip K. Dick would be okay with that.
Oh, he was totally laid back about adaptations of his works. I mean, he approved the dailies of Blade Runner right up until he died, even though it was so different. Like, actually based on another script by William S. Burroughs, as a matter of fact.
I think in Philip K. Dick novels, reality is fluid, and so you can't set down strong laws about reality. So I think he would find it amusing that when they adapt his works, that they're fluid, that the text of his work isn't, sacrosanct, that it is as fluid as he believes reality itself to be. That would just seem to...
Yeah, totally. One change I wish they'd made, it sounds like, is bringing in Larry Correia to do some touch-up on the scripts to make the Japanese a little more menacing, because, man, nobody does alternate history hero Japanese villains like he does.
They kind of soft play the Japanese. I mean, there are a couple of main characters, and one of them is I think he's a captain from the Kempe Tai, and he is ruthless, but he's also loyal, and he's a decent man who's willing to sacrifice a great deal in order to ensure that other people, that his empire is safe. Willing to hurt himself, not just hurt other people, willing to cause problems for himself in order to ensure that the empire is safe. And a lot of the side people you see are are actually pretty ruthless, the Kempe Tai, but it's not out in front like it is with the Nazis, and I think they definitely could have stepped up that aspect of it, because, I mean, Imperial Japan is the people who gave us the rape of Nanking. They could have been a lot more ruthless and been entirely realistic with it.
Yeah, without toning down, any of the nuance in the characters, or even the character likability and sympathy, because, like Dorrinal kind of pointed out, one of the key ingredients of character sympathy is competence. If you are a total monster, but you're really good at it, sometimes you can't help but respect that, but still, that kind of dedication can lead to just enormities.
And that actually is in play with John Smith. I mean, he is a frighteningly competent character. He's good at his job.
Yeah.
All right, we are almost out of time. I've got one last thing I want to say, which is about how Amazon deployed this. Amazon deployed this more of a traditional television way, where they put up a new episode I think it was every week, but it might have been more frequently, which I saw the first 2 episodes and had to stop watching because the other 2 weren't up. I dislike that a lot. I think that is the wrong approach for streaming. Yahoo did the same thing with Community Season 6. I think that that Netflix's approach where you put all the episodes up at the same time is much, much better suited to modern viewing habits, and I wish Amazon would stop trying to pretend like it's 1953 and they're the 4th network. Okay. Brian, do you have any other last thoughts?
Well, I'm sure Amazon will take your suggestion under advisement.
Oh,
but,
sure.
do you think it's possible they did that on purpose because of the retro theme of the show? Because it's supposed to be set in 1962, that's more like 1953 because of the cultural stagnation from the war. So
I would hesitate to give any major internet company credit for that much self-awareness.
Well, fair enough.
Dorrinal, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I like the show. Despite its faults, it's a lot of fun to watch. I'm looking forward to new seasons.
Wow, man, I can't believe we got through the whole show and missed this. They say it's a downer ending. Let me ask you real quick. Did you feel like it was a downer ending?
No. I liked the ending.
Okay, Go ahead.
Because the problem with the ending is that in the final episode of the season, you find out a couple of really important things that sort of shatter some of the assumptions you had earlier in the show. And I definitely can't explain that further without spoiling some really important stuff. And so I liked it, despite the details. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a fun twist.
There are things that happen in the last episode and at the end of the last episode that might not be the way I would have chosen to end it. But then again, they were secrets that I didn't know going into it. So with that secret being revealed, I would have been like, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. Moreover, there are a couple of things that happen that are sad. But they were kind of predictable from the arc that the character was taking. There's one specific character who makes a critical choice. And because of that critical choice, there are consequences for that. And I don't think you could take away those consequences and make it a happy ending for that one character without ruining what he chose to do earlier, knowingly chose to do. I think that would have ruined that part of the ending for me, even though it was sad what happens to that character.
I think I would agree with that, and I think the major downer for me, based on what I thought were the weaknesses of the show, that the 2 young leads survived the season. That was a downer.
Well, keep in mind, they were writing this not knowing if they were going to get renewed for another season, so they didn't want it to just end on a cliffhanger. Tune in next time. So they had to find a way to wrap it up while still leaving it open for another potential season. So.
All right, well, that is Geek Gab for today. We are Dorrinal, Brian Niemeier, and me, Daddy Warpig, signing off. Thanks for listening. We will be back.